Run around, kill enemies, pick up ammunition and kill more enemies. This was everything my dream game had to offer so far. It was super repetitive, it was lacking content, and in addition to that, the game was filled with bugs and badly implemented gameplay mechanics. This was a major problem that had to be fixed as fast as possible in order to draw the attention of potential new viewers. So this is exactly what I will focus on in this devlog. Fixing some major problems, getting rid of annoying bugs, and putting some work into the game's non-existent gameplay loop. But before we start, if you are new here, you might not know what my dream game even is about, so let me tell you. It's an isometric shooter with tower defense elements set in a post-apocalyptic world. You will use a caravan trailer to drive to random locations, complete quests and defend your trailer from enemies. As you keep playing, you will also uncover secrets and slowly discover the story behind the abandoned area you are stuck in. As of right now, all you can do is run around, kill enemies, hope for them to drop magazines, reload your gun and kill more enemies. What the game needs is more content, and I actually wanted to work on that, but a handful of even bigger problems popped up right before I could do so. But now let's go back in time a few weeks. The chance for the enemies to drop ammunition was very low, and sometimes you ran out of bullets before having killed a single enemy that dropped a magazine. That's why I quickly increased the chances of dropping ammunition to 25% for zombies and 50% for bandits. Now, magazines are much more common, but it's still incredibly hard to reach them because of all the enemies around you. So I decreased the enemy spawn rate and the bandits' health. I also spent some time implementing a run mechanic so the player can reach items or escape from enemies faster. You can only run if you have enough stamina, and you will run out of stamina pretty quickly if you run for too long. Your stamina will refill once you stop running, but be careful. If your stamina bar drops below this dark blue area, you will be exhausted and won't be able to move or use items for a short amount of time after stopping. The new running mechanic significantly improves the gameplay because it gives the player more options on how and where to move around. I wasn't really sure what to do next, and I didn't want to do the same mistake that I did in the game's previous version, so I decided to hand the project to the game testers in my Discord server, so they could mess around with it and find flaws or bugs. If you want to test this game and give some feedback as well, make sure to join my Discord server. The link is in the description. Luckily, the playtesters didn't find any bugs, but they had some complaints about the inventory and reloading mechanics. They also pointed out that the enemy spawn rate is still way too fast, making it very hard to fight the enemies off. Alright, now that we know the problems, let's fix them and start with remaking the inventory. The inventory had some very bad issues, and I wasn't surprised about the bad feedback regarding it. Let's say you are shooting at enemies and need to pick up ammunition. If you do so, you will automatically equip the magazine and your gun will be stored in the inventory, which oftentimes leads to your death because you lose important seconds while having to open the inventory and equipping your gun again. Another problem was the reloading mechanic. I wanted it to be unique and create a challenge for the player, but it ended up being annoying and kind of hard to use. My solution for both problems was to get rid of the entire inventory and replace it with a hotbar. Instead of having to open the inventory and move items into a special slot to equip them, you would be able to simply use your scroll wheel to switch between items. Ordering your items and reloading your guns would also be much easier because the hotbar is always accessible right away, unlike the inventory. I actually wanted to simply take the code that handles the inventory and use it for the hotbar, but I realized that it's super messy and decided to code the entire thing from scratch. After a few attempts, the hotbar worked just fine. You can select different slots with your mouse wheel or the numeric keys on your keyboard, as I mentioned before. You can also move items around between the slots, and the amount of bullets in your equipped gun or magazine will be displayed above the hotbar. The reloading of guns works just as before. You grab a magazine and click a gun with it. This way I kept the cool mechanic but made it less annoying to use because you won't be stuck in your inventory during the entire reloading process anymore. Anyway, it was kind of annoying that you wasted a bullet every time you clicked a slot while having a gun equipped, because you also shoot using the left mouse button, so now the game also checks whether your cursor is over a button while clicking. I also used the same piece of code to give the player the ability to drop items that are currently not equipped, by simply grabbing them and clicking in the middle of the screen. The next problem the playtesters mentioned was the enemy spawning. Even though I decreased the spawning rate earlier, they still spawned way too fast. The enemy spawning was random too, which means that sometimes you start playing and instantly have to deal with 15 shooting bandits. The enemy spawning is one of the most important features in my game, and if it doesn't work properly, the entire game isn't fun anymore, so let's improve it. Every good tower defense game has enemies spawning in waves that progressively become harder, so I implemented waves too. I use Unity's scriptable objects for this, so now I can create a wave, select which enemies are supposed to spawn during it, how many of them, and at which rate they are supposed to spawn. We now have a dynamic enemy spawning system in place, with enemies appearing as soon as you start playing, and they will progressively become harder to defeat, which is exactly what we aimed for. However, an important feature is still missing, allowing the player to choose when to enter a battle, so they aren't immediately being thrown into combat upon starting the game. I could simply add a start round button, but this is super boring in my opinion, so I added a new scene instead. This new scene will act as the player's base later on. Right now it looks almost identical to the scene where you have to fight enemies in. The only difference is that enemies won't spawn here and the streetlights and trees are also missing. You can just chill and walk around in this area because it doesn't really have a purpose right now. The only thing you can do is interact with the caravan trailer, and doing so will bring you straight into battle. I tried to make a decent transition between the scenes, but I failed doing so. Don't worry, I am planning to make a smoother transition soon, which will include the caravan trailer driving away to the battle scene. And just like that, I already covered all the changes I have made so far. Over the past few weeks I have dedicated most of my time to revamping existing gameplay mechanics to improve the overall gameplay experience. Most of these issues are now resolved, allowing me to focus on adding new content in the next devlog. Make sure to join my Discord server, like, subscribe and leave your feedbacks in the comments if you enjoyed watching. Have a great day and see you soon!